Okay, so in the next couple of days, we like to have a series of halachot concerning Yom HaAtzmaut. Learn a little bit about the day and what did the Chachamim say about the Independent Day. So before we start halachot, we like to go a little bit through history. Now we are accustomed to hear from many sects that Zionism is a negative thing. Satmar and many others that follow their ways. But you need to realize that Zionism needs to be separated into two different questions. One is the Zionism movement that wanted to uproot Judaism. That's one thing that's definitely negative. There were people leaders that really try to uproot religious from our nation. So that we're going to put on the side because that's definitely negative. Nobody disagrees with that. But the Zionism idea, which is bringing back our nation to the homeland, a homeland for the Jewish nation, is that rooted in Divrei Chachamim, in the Gemara. So we want to learn now, just start off with history, without even going to the sources of the Torah. The Torah says, "V'reshtem et haaretz, v'shavtem ba." The Ramban learns that it's a mitzvah deoraita to conquer the land. Machloket, we'll talk about that maybe in the next shiurim. But first of all, we like to point out that there were great rabbis on the 1800s already that wrote sfarim about going back to the land of Israel, and they were fighting for it, and they were the first ones. They were the founders of the idea of Zionism. Whether it was called back then Zionism or not, it doesn't make a difference. Whether they had a flag like you have today, or whether they have other symbols like they have today, like the menorah, that doesn't make a difference. The idea that we want to learn is that the initiative to go back to the land and build the land and create over there what we have right now was already written and promoted by great rabbis. The first one was of Tzvi Hirsch Kalischer. He wrote a sefer called Drishat Tzion. He was a talmid of Rabbi Akiva Eiger. He wrote over there in length the very principle that Am Yisrael needs to go back to the land of Israel. And if you don't go back to the land of Israel, you are me'akev the Geulah. Part of the Geulah is for us to go back to the land of Israel and to build the land. Not only go back there, not only individuals, but rather as a whole nation, try to go over there and build the land. So he wrote a whole sefer called Drishat Tzion, and he goes over there into details of what needs to be done in the land of Israel. He lived 50 years before Theodor Herzl. In other words, the ideas of Theodor Herzl was already written in details in Drishat Tzion. That's not the only one. There's also another big Chacham, Rabbi Yehuda el-Kalai. Also, great Chacham that wrote in details in the Ktavim of Rav el-Kalai. He wrote over there, he was a Talmid of Rav Eliezer Papo, the Pele Yoetz. In other words, these are not random rabbis that you can say that, they were very modern or they had ideas that are not accepted. These are rabbis that learned and received the Torah from the greatest of the greatest. So the Pele Yoetz is considered one of the greatest Chachamim that the Sephardi world has. He lived in Turkish. And he lived in Turkey, and he promoted that idea, the Rav Yehuda el-Kalai, again in his Ktavim in details. So much so that his granddaughter, when she went to the first Congress, the Zionist Congress that Theodor Herzl over there lay out all the details of how you should build the land, and he wrote a book about it. She said that she didn't hear anything new because everything that he said was already, she already heard by her father and her grandfather. These things that they know already. It's nothing that Herzl said that could be new. This is something already from more than 200 years ago. And we have Sfarim that you can read and see what they wrote over there. Not only that, Rav Yehuda Alkalai lay out also how the country should be built, whether it is militarily, financially, how it should run, with a government, everything that we have today. Rav Yehuda Alkalai said something fascinating. It was 1840 that he said that if Am Yisrael are not coming back to Eretz Yisrael, within 100 years, there will be a disaster. And if you take 100 years from that date, it's 1940. That's where the Holocaust was already, the Holocaust started in 1939, 1940. That's what he said. Mamash, he was mechaven exactly on the dot. So these are scary stuff. And this is what our rabbis said back then. Now, these rabbis are totally ignored in the world. You don't hear about them because you need to know that there are other groups that are very vocal, and those are put to the side. Now, you need to give them platform. By the way, anybody that wants to repeat what I'm saying today and what I'll say in the next class, I wrote about it in the Jewish Views this week. Also in the Five Town and other places, you can pick up on that. Also, last year I spoke about the validity of the Independence Day. If anybody wants to pick that also online, you can hear it on Torah anytime or any other place. I have also, we're going to speak maybe about saying Hallel on Yom HaAtzmaut, which is more problematic, and we'll see why. Definitely with the bracha, the rabbis don't agree with that. But let's go to the next Chacham. That Chacham is Rabbi Sachar Teichtol. He lived in a Holocaust. And he was, in the beginning, very anti what we call today Zionism. Again, the word Zionism is just a term to say that the Jewish people should have a homeland. That's all. You can call it whatever you want. People take that term and it becomes, by many groups and many sects, it becomes something negative. You can consider this negative or positive, it doesn't make a difference. It's just a term that says that just like any other nation has a homeland, Jewish people should also have a homeland. That's all it is. The only difference is other people have a homeland in a place that Italians decided they want to live in Italy. Do they have any connection to the land? No, people came in, and slowly they became a group, and they built up an Italy, a place called Italy. That's all. The only nation that has a real root to their homeland is the Jewish people. We were given that land by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the very first Rashi in the Chumash. The very first Rashi in the Chumash is why the Torah starts with Bereshit. Rashi tells us that eventually, in the future, the Goyim will come, the nations will come and say, you stole the land. You are occupying the land. It's a stolen, you're sitting in stolen land. So we need to know what to answer them. And the answer is that Hashem created the world. It's Hashem's land, and He gave it to us. That's it. Sometimes He takes it away from us, and sometimes He gives it back to us. That is the message that we need to say to anybody that asks us this question. Now, many repeat this in the following way, that really the Goyim are not going to listen. You're going to go and vocal that to people. They're not interested in what Rashi says, they're not interested in what the Torah says. This message is more to us than anybody else. We need to believe that this land was given to us. If we believe that the land was given to us, we're not going to stumble on our words when we are asked. Just like Ben Gurion, that's what he said. He said that land is given to us by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's written in the Bible. If that's the case, everybody else would stay quiet and accept our claim. Now, the next rabbi is what we said, Rav Teichtol. He wrote a Sefer Em Abanim Semecha. Again, he lived in a Holocaust. He wrote this Sefer in the hiding. In the beginning, he was again anti Zionist. And after he saw what happens in the Holocaust, he changed his mind. And he wrote a whole sefer from seeing the horrific things that happened in the Holocaust. Now, this sefer is packed with proofs that Am Yisrael needs to come back to the land. There's another sefer that is pretty controversial, and that is called Kol HaTor. Kol HaTor is considered to be written by a Talmid of the Vilna Gaon called Rav Hillel Rivlin, and it's if he was a student of the Vilna Gaon, so he lived around 200 years ago as well, or more, and he writes over there prophecy of what should be in the future. The prophecy is unbelievable. Things that he writes over there from Kabbalah, from Midrashim, from all. And he tells you exactly what will happen in the future, and things are happened exactly the way it is written in that sefer called Kol HaTor. The only problem is that many claim that sefer was forged. It was never written by Rav Hillel Rivlin. Rather, his grandchild or a few generations afterwards, Rav Shlomo Zalman Rivlin, forged the whole thing. He wrote the whole thing himself, and he claimed that's a sefer that his great-grandfather wrote, the Talmid of the Gaon Mivilna. There's no question that the Gaon Mivilna promoted going to Eretz Yisrael and building the land, and he sent students over there. But to say that his student wrote the sefer Kol HaTor, these are messages that you don't find in the Gra. And not things that also seems to be the Gra Torah and way of thinking. So there's many proofs that sefer was not written from the Talmid of the Gra, so that you should put aside. It's important to note that the right to the land of Israel against popular beliefs, that doesn't belong to us because of the horrific things that happened in the Holocaust. Which means even if the Holocaust didn't happen, we still have a right to the land. Again, the land was given to us by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore we should embrace it with two hands and do whatever we can in order to build it and help that place. The way it should be done, those Sfarim say, again in details, I'm just throwing a couple of things in the few minutes that we have, is that those that stay out of Eretz Yisrael, they must help financially those that go to Eretz Yisrael to build it. Again, at that time, Israel was, as you all know, it was not built. It was full of diseases. The land was just sand and many dumps, and you need to have people working the land, building the land. There were a lot of Talmidei Chachamim that went to such places. So it was very, very important to help, at least, if you're not going to go to the land, at least financially. Those Farim, when you read them, you think that it's a prophecy. It's like a Navi talking, because everything that they wrote over there, besides the halachot that they write and the ashkafa that they write, everything that they write over there, mamash came true each and every point, the way things happened in the future after Am Yisrael came back to the land. So it's worth reading it, and definitely worth knowing that there are sources and there are Talmidei Chachamim that really promoted the idea. Now, Rav Kalischer that I spoke to you about has askamot. You think that maybe he was Talmid of Rabbi Akiva Eiger, but he wrote things that are wild and they're not accepted. But he does have askamot to the sefer from Rav Tzvi Pesach Frank, which was considered the greatest of the rabbis in Israel. It was 100 years afterwards that he wrote the askama. It's after Rav Kalischer. But he wrote the askama to the publisher, to the person that published the sefer. So you see, it was promoted by one of the Gdolei Hador of the last generation. Also, in the time of Kalischer, it was the Malbim that also also was maskim to everything that Rav Kalischer says. So the Malbim, nobody can argue on the Malbim. Malbim was also the Gdolei Adorot. So those are very, very important things that we need to know. And if anybody ever screams, Zionism, Zionism, you need to put him down and say, calm him down and say that 1 minute, it is rooted very, very much in Chazal, in the Torah, and in the Poskim. Thank you.